everyone, and thank you for joining this afternoon. This is another edition of This Day in Black Baseball History. Of course, today is the November 20th, 25 edition of This Day of Black Baseball History, where we talk about historic events that happened in black baseball through the ages. And of course, today we're going to highlight things that happened on November 20th. We're going to start with some things started in 1915. That's as early as I'm going back today. And we're going to have a good time. So if you never joined my broadcast before, just know that I give historic facts and then I give commentary that comes from all the things I've learned in 45 years of doing African American baseball history. So, guys, this is anything I read out of a book or anything like this. Some of the people that I'm going to talk about today were people I actually interviewed or members of their family or places I've been. So I presented in a lot of places. So anyway, let's jump right in here since it's a noonday edition. And I guess some people will be joining us. If you're in the broadcast, give your name. And if you can, do a phonetic spelling of your name. That'll make it easier also if you have a difficult name. But then also say where you're listening from. All right? Okay, so let's go and jump right in here. We're going to start with November the 20th, 1915. And William Disney Diggs tossed a six-hitter to defeat Poe Parrott, Perritt, a former St. Louis Cardinals pitcher and a winner of 92 National and American League games, who allowed 13 hits. Is Ruth Foster's Chicago American Giants whipped the San Bernardino team by a 6-3 to score in California Winter League action. Pete Hill, John Henry Lloyd, and Tully McAdoo each had 3 hits, and actually each had 2 hits. Those 3 players had 2 hits, and Judy Gans picked up 3 hits. And of course, Gans and Pete Hill had hits that went for triples. Okay, so there's a lot I can talk about in this particular thing. For instance, Tully McAdoo. Tully McAdoo was from Topeka, Kansas, and I've done quite a bit of research in Topeka on Tully McAdoo, who started off with the Topeka Giants under Topeka Jack Johnson around 1906. And so talked about Tully McAdoo quite a bit. Ended up being a great first baseman. Tully McAdoo, actually, if I'm correct, I think it was either, I may have it reversed or what, but I think Tully McAdoo's sister was married to Topeka Jack Johnson, or either Topeka Jack Johnson's sister was married to Tully McAdoo. I'm going to have to go back and check my notes on that. I know it's one way or the other. But this all occurred in Topeka, Kansas. And so, but now they're playing out on the coast. Tully, of course, ended up being with St. Louis. And I know I talked to some ball players who knew Tully at the very end. I think he was a double amputee from, I think it might have been diabetes or something like that. But Tully McAdoo is certainly a great player that we don't talk about very often. And once again, I say this all the time. These are lots of players we don't talk about all the time. So McAdoo is one of those. Now, the guy I'd like to really talk about is Gans, Robert Judy Gans. Now, he was from Washington, Pennsylvania. Now, my daughter went to Howard University, and I used to drive from Kansas City, and we'd always go through Washington, Pennsylvania. Now, I knew that in 1931, Double Duty Ratcliffe threw a no-hitter in Washington, Pennsylvania, and that's pretty much all I knew. But then as I started to research, I started to realize that Judy Gans, Robert Judy Gans, a just great player, came from Washington, Pennsylvania. Now, he was also a great football player, and I don't know how much you know about football as it was played by African-American teams, but Washington, PA was a powerhouse in football. And this was black professional football. And so they would play there, and McAdoo got his start there. And in football, and I'm talking about his career in football. He played with several teams and right there. And then he went over to Buffalo, New York, and played with several teams there as well. So Joe Gans was quite the football player, and I don't think that enough is talked about all of his all-around athleticism that he had. So that is Robert Judy Gans. Of course, he ended up breaking in with the Pittsburgh team. I think it was the Keystones. And of course, they had people like Bob Gilkerson was on that team, who ends up being the manager and owner of the Gilkerson Union Giants. And of course, he passed away by suicide in Spring Valley, Illinois. I've actually been to the house where the suicide occurred when I was speaking up in Spring Valley. So I've been to Washington, PA, the home of Robert Judy Gans, and he's buried, of course, in Philadelphia. Gans is. Gilkerson is buried in Spring Valley, Illinois. And of course, I've been to where he's buried, but not to where Gans is buried in Philadelphia. So hopefully this year they're having a Major League All-Star game there in Philadelphia. And I will go and I'll get a chance to visit some of these places and maybe do some lives from there. So just want to let you know. And that was a game that occurred, believe it or not, November the 20th, 1915. William Dismukes, a submarine pitcher, by the way. Dizzy Dismukes is what they called him. And I actually produced a baseball card set back in 1987, and I featured Dismukes in the set. And I had to do a lot of research to find out where he passed away, and it was in Ohio. So he was living at the home of his sister. And so I was able to find all that information with a little bit of help from Buck O'Neill at that particular time. He kind of guided me to the city, and then I did the rest through the sources that I used, the library, the local mortuaries, the cemeteries, and I put that history together. And then, of course, now it's probably easy to get because you guys can just go online and pop right into it and get some information. But back then, guys, we had to work for everything we got. So anyway, let me see. I do want to say hello to some people because I'm going to jump right through here in this noonday edition. Let's see. This one's got, I'm not sure how you pronounce that. That's why I love it when you break it down into a way that I can understand it. So, but anyway, somebody says hello. It's at UTENTEFCP. Not sure what that would mean, but they're saying hello. It said, can I ask you? And then it says, can I ask you something? If it's related to baseball, you bet you can. Then I have someone, Sonor 4614. Hi, Negro League man. You make me happy every day. My father passed away from cancer, and I've been trying my best. Let's see, my best to, I guess he's been trying to follow me every day. So, and every time you make a something or a live stream, that makes me happy. Well, I appreciate that. Baseball, for me, has been quite a joy. And all the people I've met, many of them passed away and everything like that. I think about those memories, and they're like treasures to me now. And so I'm sure you have great memories with your father too as well. So hopefully, maybe he was a baseball fan and he would have enjoyed this broadcast too. So we'll think about him and all the fathers who introduced their sons to baseball. Even the mothers. Sometimes mothers have introduced their sons to baseball. All right. So I appreciate that. Now we're going to go back and jump in here. So how about this one? Monday, November 20th, 1922. The New York Commonwealth Big Five basketball team defeated the Philadelphia Vikings at Commonwealth Casino before a crowd of 5,000. The score was 56-10. Now, why would I mention this? Well, first of all, the Commonwealth Big Five. Well, how about this? You probably watch wrestling, right? You know the McMahon who runs the wrestling, Vince McMahon. Well, his grandfather was his team, and it was an African American team that his grandfather was Jess McMahon and his brother were promoting, and a couple of great players on that team. You've got Fats Jenkins, George File was another one. I'm trying to think of somebody else that was really big on that team, but these are the early introductions to Black professional basketball. So that's the team. I'm going to be talking about them a little bit more. The New York Commonwealth Big Five, and this is 1922. Great team, guys. Great team, and they beat a lot of people. You will learn more about them. So I'll talk about them a little bit more, and that gives me a chance to talk about like Fats Jenkins, who played professional basketball and baseball. And And there were some who believed that Fast Jenkins was the greatest basketball player of that period, of that era, right in there. So, okay, so Fast Jenkins. Now, some from time to time, some other teams would bring in ringers. So they would bring in Composey is a ringer, and he would come down from Pittsburgh. Composey was quite the basketball player. Of course, he goes on to own the Homestead Grays. All right. So, all right then. So, we're going to keep on going. How about November 20th, 1926? Now we're out in California, back to California, Winter League action. We got Andy Cooper pitched the Los Angeles Royal Giants to an 8-3 win over Shell Oil at Los Angeles White Sox Park. Cooper struck out 5 batters. That is Andy Cooper. Andy Cooper originally came up through Wichita, Kansas. He was a great pitcher down in Wichita, and you would think that him being so close to Kansas City, he would have went to the Kansas City Monarchs, but he ended up with the Detroit Stars. And then in the late 20s, the Kansas City Monarchs traded for him, and then he spent the latter part of his career with the Kansas City Monarchs. But Cooper was a left-handed pitcher, a big guy, and I know some of the players, they had real skinny legs. If you ever look at his picture, you can see he's kind of like, he's almost like built like a triangle, skinny legs, wide at the top. Great player. And that is Andy Cooper. And so he passed away in Waco, Texas. Got sick during spring training, I think in 1939. And he passed away. It might have been 1940, one of those. And he passed away in Texas. And once again, that's another story. It took me a while to try to figure out where Cooper went. We're going back 40 years. This is before newspapers online. It's before certainly newspapers online. And you didn't have any ancestry or anything like that online. You had to go to the library and research these things and then talk to a lot of people. And I can remember quizzing Buck O'Neill over and over again at whether or not Cooper died in Kansas City or if he died in Texas. Turns out he died in Texas, and he's buried in Texas. So that's Andy Cooper. But for a time, he lived in Wichita, Kansas. And I was speaking in Wichita some years ago, and some of his relatives came to hear me present down there. And so I took the number down, and then the next time I went there about a year later, then their number had changed, and I never could find that relative again. So every time I go to Wichita, I always ask if someone knows this particular person, because one of these people probably was about 50 years old, who was kin to Cooper. So hopefully I will find that person again. All right, just keep it going. November 20th, 1927, John Beckwith went 2 for 4, and Andy Cooper, how about we back to Cooper, pitched the entire route in the Hilldale Giants. They were called the Philadelphia Hilldale Giants. 9-4 win over Ellis of Orange County, and they had a team called the All-Stars at Los Angeles White Sox Park. So once again, this is Winter League baseball, and you got John Beckwith out there. Now, John Beckwith, oh man, he was quite the home run hitter. Babe Ruth said that he was the greatest home run hitter that he had ever seen. He said Beckwith can hit the ball further than anyone I've ever seen. And that's what Babe Ruth said. And I quoted that in my book way back in 1992, The Negro Baseball Leagues of Photographic History. So you can probably find that now. So, yeah. So that is a little bit about John Beckwith, just a great player. I think when I post this, I might put Jack Beckwith's picture up today. In 1921, now, the Cincinnati Reds of the National League played at Redland Park, and John Beckwith was the first player to hit a home run out of the entire park. So that's John Beckwith. I remember watching games, Cincinnati playing at that park there. This is before they had built their new stadium there in the 70s, but they were still playing as a kid at the old park. And I remember in the outfield, instead of it being flat, at a certain point, it started to go up in the air. So it had like a higher ground in the back. Somebody knows about this. Yeah, and I used to see it on TV. That's the only reason I knew that. So, all right. Okay, so that's Beckwith. And let's see. All right, so we got a couple more. 1927. We're still out in California. How about this one? So shortstop Willie Wells hit a pair of home runs and drove in 5 runs for the Cleveland Colored Giants in a 7-5 win over Joe Peroni's All-Stars at Santa Ana's Orange County Fairgrounds in California. Willie Wells had a chance to interact with Willie Wells. I do have autographs by Willie Wells that he sent to me in on index cards. So, but Willie Wells ended up at the time I was speaking to him. He was not a member of the Cooperstown Baseball Hall of Fame, but he did get in eventually to the Hall of Fame with just a great shortstop for St. Louis. He was a great power hitter too. Now, to me, in my estimations, in the early 20s, I always thought Dobie Moore was probably the greatest shortstop. Willie Wells was a great shortstop. Dobie Moore gets injured in 1926, and he passes from the scene because his injury was to his legs. He got shot in the leg, believe it or not, and fractured the major bones in his leg. So that ended his career. But I always liked Dobie Moore a lot because I always thought that he was just a great player. And so I don't know how much you know about Walter Dobie Moore. He was from Atlanta, Georgia. Of course, Willie Wells is from, where's he from in Texas? Austin. He's from Austin, Texas. That's where he's from. And he's buried there as well. And he also had a son that played, and they played together, believe it or not. It was a father and son playing together on the same team. If I'm not correct, it was with the Memphis Red Sox in the late 40s, maybe early 50s. So that's Willie Wells. So that's another name that you ought to log in your book and look these guys up, guys. You know, I was involved in a project that merged the National American League and all those statistics that were in that record book, the old Macmillan book, with the Negro League statistics. And I can tell you this, there was a lot of Negro Leaguers that they're not talking about, but they said that they merged like 1,200 or more Negro Leaguers. Well, guys, we're only probably talking about 100 of these guys. So we need to begin talking about everybody, start talking about as many of these players as possible because this history is broad. And about every city around, there's black people that were good baseball players, and a lot of professional baseball players came from these places, and we just don't talk about them. All right, then the last one for today, and then we're going to say goodbye to everybody. I'm going to respond to some of your messages, the more serious messages that you've sent. And so we have November 20th, 1951. Hank Aaron's professional baseball career began on this date when scout Ed Scott signed Aaron to a contract for the Indianapolis Clowns of the Negro American League. And that was in the fall of 1951. Hank Aaron would play part of the 1952 season with the Indianapolis Clowns. Of course, he is picked up by the Braves, and he goes on to be a legendary player. And I remember the day that he broke Babe Ruth's record. And it's interesting because along the way, he received so many death threats. And you kind of figure out, why would people threaten a ball player for breaking someone's record? And that's how true some people held these records, that they couldn't stand to see these records being broken. But the truth of the matter is, guys, the new guys coming along all the time, and they're looking at the old records, and they're trying to put those records back in the record book. And be honest with you guys, we've seen a lot of beautiful things that happen in baseball, but one of them are people making new records. And so Hank Aaron was one of those people, but trying to break a record that was set by Babe Ruth, these people, once again, they didn't want to see that record fall, and they were willing to send you death threats to keep that record from falling. Hank Aaron didn't pay any attention to him, kept hitting home runs, ended up with 755 in his career, and he was the all-time home run hitter when I was a kid. All right, so I'm going to get out of here right now, and I do want to thank everybody for joining. If you came in and you stayed for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, even if you stayed for a minute, I appreciate your support. If you like what I'm doing, guys, go ahead and subscribe. If you really like what I'm doing, share it. Share this broadcast. People will love to hear. And people, if you're a baseball fan, other people who are baseball fans, they might not even know I exist, but that's okay. And guys, of course, I'm an author too. So I have, from time to time, I'll bring a book in here. This is one of my books right here that I have. This is one of my books right here. The Dizzy and Daffy Dean Barnstorming Tour, Race, Media, and America's National Pastime. It's a real page turner. I think all my books are page turners. But I'm the real deal, guys. So I'm not someone who just picked up this hobby because they thought it was popular. I helped to make it popular. And so I'm hoping that we can keep this conversation going and everyone can learn. Everybody can learn. Every day I learn something. I remember things. And sometimes I have to go and do a little research before I come to you. So it makes me stay on top of my game as well. So let's see, here we go. Let's see, how many we going? I'm gonna see if there's something really serious. So I'm going back to the guy talking about his dad. Appreciate that. Then somebody says, please give me my money back. And we're gonna remove him. He's not serious. He said, somebody says, okay, he's not serious. Talking about come to work in somebody's okay. I take serious questions. Okay, and then we'll get rid of that one. Guys, it's kind of rough today. Somebody that draft spooky said hello. I guess that's legitimate. And so, not a lot of baseball fans in here, but we sure got some people who we'll just say they're out in left field. How about that? They could be out in right field too, but they're certainly not with us. So, guys, I want to thank you for joining, and feel free to share this broadcast. All right, guys. So, thank you. This is Phil Dixon, and I'm a baseball historian. I go by Phil S. Dixon, and I am happy to be here today to give you all of this information. So, I may come back again. I never know if I'm going to come back at nighttime, but I'm certainly I'm capable of that, and I may come back and give you something different that you never expected. All right, guys. Thank you, and you have a nice day, and we look forward to joining you again.